to episode 272 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 11th of March 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Félim.
Paddy, not Patty.
Graham.
Hello.
And Will.
Hello, friends.
Let's do some news then, and the huge news is KDE Plasma 6 has been released. Now, you talked about this a couple of weeks ago. You've now been trying it. It seems that there were some teething problems with KDE Neon.
There was. Unfortunately, there seemed to be some sort of packaging error which broke something. It wasn't really to do with KDE. It was down to apt doing something funky with a package and deinstalling, but they're doing an investigation into what happened and then straightening it out so it never happens again. So, yeah, unfortunate, but luckily I had a laptop that I just tried it on first because, I mean, let's face it, it's a .0. You don't want to be risking that on the main machine, so yeah, I'm glad I did. It wasn't a showstopper. I could have got by with it. Essentially, my K-runner wouldn't start. There was some service definition entry that was removed or not in the right place or something. And the other thing was the logout button didn't work. But I mean, you could just control F3 into a different terminal and it just restarted from there or whatever. Not a massive deal. I could have got by with it, but I just chose to hang on a few days. And they were pretty quick getting those fixes out, so that was good.
Now, I installed this on a laptop, a T480. And it really wasn't much different from 5.
No, and I know we have a link to Liam Proven as a write-up on the register. And this is the start. I mean, this is to get everything up and set up and ready for the next, well, I doubt it's going to be 10 years again, but it's that next section. So this is the important bit to get ready to go. Cleaning up all the bits and pieces that were cruft, whatever, and making it ready for, you know, developing on all the point releases, because that's where all the real stuff happens in a gradual, continual rolling sort of build process. So, I mean, I think this is just really the start. This is just making sure that we're ready to go for it.
Yeah, and I think one of the main problems in the past has been kind of huge ABI breaking changes in Qt, you know, between 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. And the fact that this has been a transition that's been so well managed is almost the best feature itself.
No, the best feature is making single click, select, and double click open to be the default.
Wait, what?
Well, you can change them to whatever you want. And that is exactly how I have mine set by default anyway, because I don't know how you're meant to select things without it then starting a bunch of shit. So I never got that.
And I'm not sure about this floating panel business.
Yeah, I mean, it does look nice, but it doesn't suit the way I have my desktop because I've only got half a vertical screen of mine kind of shoved up into the top left corner. So for me, it doesn't really work, but it does look nice on the laptop, say. I have it in a few VMs, and it gets out of the way and docks as such when you go to full screen or large or near it. So, I mean, it doesn't take space if you don't need it to. Well, I guess it's just design. I guess a lot of stuff does use docks these days. They're quite popular. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of way of having it by default.
But as you say, it's all easily changed with a million options.
A million searchable options that are easy to use and straightforward. Therefore, they're very usable by everybody of any skill level.
If you need to search through settings, then that is a failure of UI and UX.
Why? Oh, so you know everything on the internet then, do you? You don't use Google, you just go to all the web addresses.
If you have to search through settings, Félim, like in Android, that is a disaster. Same with macOS and iOS. Having to search through settings, it should be in logical hierarchical menu.
Well, yeah, right, great. So that's why you just, use a phone book all the time rather than actually just type in your address book on your phone then. Come on, that's daft. If there's bound to be enough choice for people to want to do things different ways, we're not all the same, and at least KDE appreciates that fact that people can do things differently. And they're not hard. And do you know what? I forgot to look in that settings thing for ages. Only today, after about a week and a half of using it, I forgot, oh, jeez, they've actually redone this. I've forgotten that it was there because I don't go into my settings all the time.
Do you know what you don't have to search through? The GNOME settings.
You'd have to search for all the ones I'd taken away, in all fairness.
Can you even find the shut down button in GNOME?
It is a couple of clicks away, I think. I just do sudo power off anyway.
How have you installed it, Félim? I was interested because I saw that the Arch packages were updated just a few days ago, and I've not had a chance to update mine.
The Neon ones are actually pretty quick out the door. if not even the same day. I think it was like several hours over a half day, but those ones were broken. Now, I did do it on my laptop the same day of it. Like, it was around lunchtime that I got mine upgraded. And yeah, I mean, I could still use it and all, it was fine. But I waited till, I think it was a Tuesday that it came out. And I think it was late Wednesday or early Thursday that I then upgraded my main machine. And that was just a simple apt upgrade, and that was it.
Something else that's interesting is that they've gone all in on Wayland by default.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, though. I've done this a few months ago, and I really have no trouble with it. And I use Steam, I use virtual machines, I use Teams for certain clients, I use Rustdesk to share desktop stuff, and I've had no trouble with any of that stuff working at all.
Do you do much screen sharing?
I do, yeah. So I use Rustdesk to do that, and I use Teams to do that as well. So it's great because with Wayland, you know that there's not stuff spying on each Windows that they aren't supposed to. Now, I'm not saying that most applications are going to do that, but malware can also do that, where, you know, the permission system on X is atrocious, and we should all know that. And people who keep standing up for X, if they think it on a security side of things is any good, they're just so wrong about that. So to be away from that whole setup is great. And the fact that you can say, right, Teams, you can have a look at my browser window while I do this demo or whatever, and you know that that's all it can look at, and that's great.
I've heard anecdotally that people are using the Zoom screen sharing quite successfully on Wayland. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it. But to hear you talk about it, then I believe it. So maybe the time is coming.
Yeah, and now I don't know if this is part of the tool. There's a tool called Wayland Bridge or Wayland Video Bridge or something like that. And what it does is for applications that don't have like the proper link into the API or something like that, it allows them to share it through this sort of bridge library. And maybe that's all that needs to be done for various things to work.
The other thing I was missing with Wayland was the porting of the tiling scripts from the Xwin versions. And I haven't had a chance to see whether any of those projects that were previously forked and promised support have been able to do so. I know there's the native Plasma KDE tiling, but for my old fixed point of view, I really needed to have that move across to Wayland.
Just use Sway, come on.
Don't do it, Graham.
If you're going to be a tiling hipster, just do it properly. I don't get this hybrid approach.
It's because I have to have the wobbly windows. That really is really important. No, the cube's back. That's good.
The cube's back, and it can also be a triangle, which it is for me, because I only have 3 desktops. And I said, no, it's not going to work now, is it? And then it was like, oh, it's a triangle cube. What's a triangle cube? I have no idea.
So back in the day, I used to be a big fan of the cube. I think we even used a screenshot of mine on the cover of Linux Format. But I've moved to the sliding style because conceptually I have the top one for work stuff, the second one for work stuff, the third one for me is a floating window one, and the bottom one is personal stuff. And they kind of exist in this space, and I can skip between them. And I need to see the transition between them for my brain to switch context.
Joe, are you any closer to thinking about ditching XFCE and trying out something a little bit more full-featured?
A little bit closer in terms of I'm starting to think, if they don't get their skates on, I'm going to be very seriously left behind. But they are now starting to make noises about Wayland support for XFCE. So I'm really hoping that I won't have to. But yeah, maybe. What are you thinking about?
Well, similar. I'm quite happy with XFCE. It does everything I need it to do and nothing else. But I do wonder if there are features that I'm missing out on that exist in KDE.
Well, I can say this without a doubt, yes.
but what are they, though, actually?
It doesn't matter. You are.
I'm a little bit hesitant to move to something that has got more bells and whistles and make my life materially more difficult. Like the way I've got it set up at the moment, it just does what I want and nothing else, and I'm okay with that. But I don't know. It's tempting. Wobbly windows and all that sort of stuff, just for a play, just to amuse myself for a little while.
Well, as I said, I tried this out on a T480, which is an 8th gen i5. And I've been using that with XFCE for the last month or so, and it's been absolutely brilliant. But I tried to do a bit of document editing, Google Docs, to prepare for this show, and it just felt a bit sluggish with Plasma 6 on KDE Neon. So I don't know if that was just a psychological thing or what, but XFCE still wins in the performance stakes in my mind. And that's really the most important to me.
Yeah. When I switch workspaces, when I switch windows, there is no animation. There is no delay at all. It's just immediate. Perhaps I've got used to that, and it would feel wrong.
You can turn the animation off. Like, I don't have animation for when I flick between virtual desktops, and it's literally instantaneous.
Yeah, I do think that Plasma is that little bit heavier than XFCE, though.
I don't know. I think we'll have to go back to some of those news stories we used to have where people were disputing that claim.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's fuller featured, and it could be a Wayland versus X thing, possibly. I don't know. But I just didn't have as good a time with it compared with XFCE on the same machine.
I think you didn't want to have as good a time.
Well...
And you convinced yourself.
Look, what would happen if I changed to Plasma? You would just gloat so much that I just cannot have that. I'd rather move to tiling or bloody GNOME or something just to troll you.
That's fine. Well, really, I'm trolling you.
We'd also lose a lot of content for the show, so don't do it, Joe.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is an easy-to-deploy, zero-config, no-fuss VPN that allows you to build simple networks across complex infrastructure. It's super simple to set up, and you can have machines and devices all over the world connected to each other as if they're on the same LAN in minutes. Tailscale is WireGuard on easy mode, and that's why loads of late-night Linux family hosts are Tailscale users. Amalith from Linux DevTime uses Tailscale for his 3D printers, all his servers, and his home automation. And Gary from Linux After Dark and I both send our offsite backups to our parents' houses using Tailscale. So support the show and check out Tailscale for yourself. Go to tailscale.com/LNL and try Tailscale out for free for up to 100 devices and 3 users with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL.
I had an interesting conversation with someone this week about what the KDE developers get right and compared to like the GNOME developers. And in fact, GNOME is looking fantastic and GTK is looking really good. I really genuinely think so. But it's pretty remarkable. I think I saw today that there's only kind of 8 or 10 KDE Plasma developers working on this, making daily commits every day. And what's the difference in the success criteria of those two projects? And it seems to me, or it seemed to us, that GNOME and GTK still wanted to be like this cross-platform framework, you know, that people could build still GTK apps for Windows or Mac OS. And Plasma and KDE once had this kind of ambition, but since it's given up on it, and since it's just focused on being this kind of esoteric, let's accept all the options desktop environment, I think it's found its kind of strength and its stride. I don't know what you think, but it seems to be that's what the big difference is between those two now.
Isn't a lot of that to do with Qt and the various license changes and stuff?
Oh, it could be. You mean it's forced their hand? I mean, yes, maybe you're right, because, well, back in the day, and I don't know now, but lots of part of KDE was in Qt, and the Qt project and Trolltech and Nokia used to sell that as part of the kind of deliverable package with Qt, but I guess that's no longer the case.
I think there must be a big freedom to not having to also develop the toolkit. I know, yeah, you can say, well, if you develop the toolkit, you can do what you want with it. But I mean, realistically, who's getting excited about developing a toolkit these days? And it must be freeing for the KDE developers to not have to deal with that side of things.
They just have to deal with the hassle of the Qt company and their bullshit.
I think it's a bit oversold. I don't think there's that much of a deal.
I think they keep testing it every few years, don't they? Whoever owns the Qt company, and seeing what the kind of, it's a litmus test to see how the community responds. And as long as we keep pushing back, I think we'll be all right. But it's a pity. I mean, we've had to do that for 20 years now, 20 years plus, actually, isn't it? But it'd be interesting, I think, if the GTK GNOME developers just focused on the desktop and perhaps gave up on their ambitions to be this, create apps that users just love across all platforms.
But it's about creating an ecosystem, isn't it? And KDE does do that. How many KDE apps are there? There's like hundreds of them, aren't there?
Yeah, there's loads. It's quite cool.
So is it really that different?
Yeah, but they've kept to their crazy KDE-ness, haven't they? I mean, Krita on Windows and Mac OS it's probably got the most settings of any application on any of those platforms. You know, it's still KDE, really.
Yeah, but it's still extremely well used.
Yeah, and really successful, yeah. So they've not had to make any apologies for just doing it the way that they want to do it.
I don't think that is necessarily the difference between KDE and GNOME. I think the difference is more a philosophical difference of, like we joke about the options with KDE, making it just completely customizable, whereas with GNOME and GTK, it's more about cleanliness of design, if that's a word, and just making things simple.
I can completely understand that. You know, all of us who have struggled over trying to write the perfect sentence to communicate the perfect thing in the fewest number of uncomplicated words. But at the end of the day, you just can't get there. You have to write a couple of sentences or a paragraph instead. And I think that's what the KDE team do, while the GNOME team is still trying to work out that single perfect sentence.
It's interesting that LXQt is also in the process of moving to Qt 6 with their version 2 of the lightweight desktop.
Could just turn the animations off on KDE and there you go. I jest.
I think this might be a happy medium. It seems like a sensible stepping off point for me to sort of ease myself into the world of full-featured desktops. It looks pretty nice. It looks smooth. They've put some extra care and attention to the way that it looks and the way that it feels that perhaps XFCE have kind of shortcut that. It just looks appealing to me. I'm quite keen to give it a go.
Yeah, I could see how it would be a happy medium, but I just feel like if you're going to use a Qt-based desktop, why not use the Daddy?
Correct.
Yeah, obviously you're going to agree with that. I don't think that LXQt is anywhere near as light as LXDE used to be, but that was pretty much a dead end unless you're the Raspberry Pi Foundation. But that said, I haven't tried it for a while, and I will try it when 2 comes out properly, and maybe it will make more sense then. All right, let's do a news story that I'm nicknaming Nintendo Shower of Bastards. So Yuzu was a Switch emulator, and Nintendo were like, nah, you can't do that anymore. You're making too much on your Patreon, and sued them. And now they've got to cough up $2.4 million and delete all their repos and stuff. If only it wasn't open source though, eh? Because now we've got Suyu, which is a fork of it, and they are being very careful, or trying to be very careful not to get sued by not taking any money and stuff like that. I mean, it's not the only fork, but it seems to be the one that people are gathering around.
I'm confused by this not taking money equals not getting sued thing. How's that work?
It works by wishful thinking.
Ah!
Because Nintendo are a litigious shower of bastards, aren't they? Like, they go after everyone.
Protect their IP, I think that's what you mean, yes.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. I mean, is it really eating into their bottom line if people are emulating the Switch on Linux and Windows boxes?
Doesn't appear to be.
Yeah. Maybe it's the Android thing that they're more worried about.
I don't know. It probably does need to be tested in courts, but unfortunately none of these projects will be able to defend themselves, or the normal human beings who are working on these projects will ever want to see it get to that. But the stress of going up against Nintendo for your personal project that happens to emulate a Switch or a Nintendo DS, I couldn't go through it. But it is still such an amazing project. I know they've probably flew very close to the sun in the way that they ran their Patreon and the availability of the ROMs. But I mean, this household, we've got 4 Switches, God knows how many, versions of Mario Odyssey and Zelda. But I ran it on a PC and it was phenomenal being able to have new textures on those things and being able to play the game at such high quality that the Patreon presumably brought to it and the passion in the project. And yes, totally promoting, really, Nintendo's incredible game development. And that's why it existed and why it was a success. Emulation's always skirted this close to this kind of legal grey area, so probably it needs to be properly tested, but I dread the day that it's properly tested because it's such a fun part of what computing is about.
But even if it does get properly tested and properly cracked down upon, so many of these emulators are open source that surely there's not much they can actually do about it. Because it's just whack-a-mole, isn't it? Like, they can take down one GitHub repo, but then it'll just be hosted somewhere else with a different name.
It's the symbolism of taking down a project who was successful and had a community, and Nintendo just sort of said no. And I was surprised at how quickly they folded. I say folded, how quickly they decided that, that it was in an unwinnable situation and coughed up. It seemed to go from the news story breaking to the GitHub repo being gone within 2 or 3 days. It seemed really fast to me. But this is it. This will ring through, as Graham was saying, ring through the community. And people think, oh, you know what? I don't really want to get involved in defending myself against Nintendo. That sounds like a bad idea. However, Nintendo must be aware that as soon as they cut off one of the heads of these emulators, 3 more will spring up from where it was, especially since there must be, I don't know, thousands of copies of the source code kicking around the internet. They're just going to pop up everywhere. So it's just unwinnable on both sides. And so we just continue doing this little dance. And it feels like as long as it's underground, then Nintendo kind of tolerate it for a little while. But as soon as it becomes too big, then that's it. You're shut down. And so you just need to get that balance just right.
Yeah, do you remember Bleem? I just had to look up the date of when that was. Bleem was a PlayStation emulator for the PC back in 1999. And I remember this because that also allowed you to upscale what were already looking very crappy and low-res games from the PlayStation 1 era on the PC. And it was an amazing project. And Sony, the threat of litigation from Sony eventually closed the project, not the legal side of it. So we're still kind of fighting those battles.
Could it make the Die Hard game look not shit?
I thought that was the whole point with Die Hard.
I suppose. I wonder if this is just about them being seen to do something about it for their shareholders. Like they have to crack down on this stuff and say, oh yeah, we're definitely going to sue you and all that kind of thing, knowing that it's open source and going to get forked and it's a Hydra situation. But they just have to do something and be seen to be doing something.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I think that's the primary motivator. Now they did say in one of the articles I read, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was somewhere along the order of 1 million copies of Zelda they think they missed out on. So yeah, that's a significant amount of money, and they need to demonstrate to the studios as much as anybody that the investment that they're willing to put into the brand is going to be protected by that brand. And with a Switch 2 on the horizon, like 18 months out or something, I think they need to be making sure that everyone who is investing millions and millions of dollars into developing games for their platform has got somebody with some might behind them that is not going to witness people stealing their code and being happy with it.
I think that's true. But I mean, with games like Zelda, they're amazing games, and if you really care about games, you want to play it on the native hardware as Nintendo intended. There aren't that many games in existence of that high quality, and I'm sure that would be the case for most of those people downloading Zelda a week ahead of its official release. These are fans who probably no doubt played it on their Switch, and those people who only played it crudely on their PCs or maybe their Steam Decks with a lower frame rate probably wouldn't have bought it anyway.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Kolide. When you go through airport security, there's one line where the TSA agent checks your ID and another where a machine scans your bag. The same thing happens in enterprise security, but instead of passengers and luggage, it's end users and their devices. These days, most companies are pretty good at the first part of the equation, where they check user identity, but user devices can roll right through authentication without getting inspected at all. In fact, a huge percentage of companies allow unmanaged, untrusted devices to access their data. That means an employee can log in from a laptop that has its firewall turned off and hasn't been updated in 6 months. Or worse, that laptop might belong to a bad actor using employee credentials. Kolide finally solves the device trust problem. Kolide ensures that no device can log into your Okta-protected apps unless it passes your security checks. Plus, you can use Kolide on devices without MDM, like your Linux fleet, contractor devices, and every BYOD phone and laptop in your company. So support the show and go to kolide.com/late-night-linux to watch a demo and see how it works. That's KOLIDE.com/late-night-linux. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to late-night-linux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact with us, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. All right, we criticise Mozilla quite a lot on this show, but Félim, you wanted to show them some love this week.
Yeah, marginal bit. Don't get too carried away because they'll only let it go to their heads and think they're doing a great job, which they clearly aren't. But this is the MDM curriculum. It's really, really nicely done. It's a way for people to get into web development, and it is the sort of way to get into each of the various subjects laid out in a nice course to help you go all the way through it, which is really, really good. Making use of that nice MDM library that's there.
This is where Mozilla really show their community spirit, that they invest significant amount of money and energy into producing these courses and all of this documentation, and then give it away for the betterment of the web and the betterment of the internet. This is exactly the sort of thing they should be doing, and they are really, really good at it. And it's great to see these courses available for free.
And a lot of their stuff is really nicely written as well. Like if you're doing any sort of thing and you do a search on the MDN, you'll find something for it generally, and with code examples and decently written. It's not just some hack together AI nonsense that looks like it went through the translation engine about 15 times. It's like proper decent documentation, and it's great. And yes, exactly. Do more of this.
Missing, presumed, deleted. Now, this is not about Linux and open source. Sorry, it's about me shitting on Spotify. But what are you going to do? So there's a podcast called Evolving Prisons, and that was hosted with what used to be called Anchor and is now called Spotify for podcasters. It's Spotify's own hosting platform. Well, they bought Anchor. Now, this was all going really well, and the lady running this podcast had built up a big audience, quite a lot of whom were paying a couple of bucks a month for bonus content and stuff. Not unlike what we do here, let's just say, but probably way more successful. And then one day, it just got kicked off. Spotify just deleted. And then she complained and, kicked up a bit of a fuss, and they reinstated the podcast. All good, you would say, except no, she'd lost all her subscribers, including the paid ones.
Jesus.
They've shown their true colors by not getting rid of Rogan and trying to take over podcasting and being, trying to be the YouTuber podcasting and failing. Haha. But shit like this, man, just makes me really, really dislike them. And I just wanted to put it out there. Don't host your show with them if you want it to be successful, or if you're worried that it might get successful, because they can just do a rug pull. Host it yourself if you've got the skills to do it. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Do you know, if you host your podcast yourself and then it gets picked up by one of the aggregators and they use dynamic ads, could they still insert ads into your podcast?
I don't see why they couldn't do that. No, Spotify, for example, could ingest this show and then just inject their own ads into it. I think there'd be a bit of a backlash if they did, but it's probably in their terms of service.
But surely you have to submit it to them to do that, right? As in you would have to agree to some sort of terms. They can't just hoover up random podcasts off the web and host them separately, right?
Yeah, but I did submit our shows to Spotify, and I did click yes to their giant terms of service, which, of course, I read every word of.
Obviously you did. You could recite them from paragraph or line wherever you wanted to.
Has it been worth it, Joe? Can you say?
I think so. I mean, it's a bit disheartening to see the Spotify numbers going up, to be honest, because it's like...
Not anymore.
Maybe. But, increasingly, yes, people are listening on Spotify, which I'm not thrilled about, but you've got to go where people are. It's like, oh yeah, shout out to the YouTube people. I always forget you, but people actually listen to this show on YouTube with their dancing visualization. It's for you, few hundred people who listen to the shows there that go through the ball ache of. I'm going to have to do it in a VM again.
Go through the ball ache. Go through the upgrading process from various Python versions as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and it's about to break again when I upgrade to 2404. So I'll have to have a VM again, unless someone wants to fix it for me.
I'll have a look at it for you.
Well, unless someone competent wants to fix it.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were getting picky now. Fucking hell. Okay, I see.
No, it would be very good if you could fix that for us, Félim.
I may have overpromised and will underdeliver, but we'll see.
But I think it's different putting your stuff on Spotify as an additional thing, but as long as the RSS feed is under your control, I think that's what's important. If you trust it to a big company or any company, then you run the risk of shit like this happening.
It's almost like getting your own domain name. That's you. Unless it's illegal and somebody takes it away from you that way, as long as you've got your own DNS, that's you on the internet.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Really, as long as we can keep hold of the domain name, then we're all right. And we're not doing anything dodgy. not advocating people pirate Switch games or anything. No, definitely don't do that. Only rip the ones you've already got. Same with your DVDs.
As long as your area allows that.
Oh, yeah. Good point. Just buy everything legitimately. That's the official line.
Twice.
But just once again, if you are not in control of stuff, you're not in control, are you? And anything can happen. And this poor lady who's built this great show by the sounds of things, I've never listened to it, I'm not really into true crime, but it sounds like it was successful, and now she's got to rebuild it all from scratch. Let there be a lesson. Right, well, we'd better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when we might have Voice of the Masses again. We might have some discoveries, who knows? But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Félim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.